going to start with an introduction to the, as I said in the afternoon class, to the classes that we'll be doing, Cindy and I will be doing for the next 4 afternoons on the so-called Eightfold Path, an 8-part guideline to to how to live a good life, really, how to be happy, how to live a life that's conducive to happiness. And tonight's a little bit of the setup for that. The text that these teachings will be drawn from is called the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. Patthana. These are like, in Indian languages, they have retroflex. That's why they talk like that. That's the Indian accent, is because they have what they call a retroflex consonant, which means that you put your tongue on the top of your mouth when you're saying it. So patthana, patthana. Maha means great. Sutta means, you could translate it as discourse. In the Buddhist tradition, sutta or sutras, the Sanskrit version, are regarded as the actual words of the Buddha. And then there are something called shastras, which are kind of like authoritative commentaries on that. There's two basic classes of texts in Buddhism. So this is a sutta, and they say sutta instead of sutra because it's in Pali. Pali is a dialect of Sanskrit. Sanskrit is sort of like Latin in the West. It's a formal language, and it became like a kind of a dead language in terms of its actual, speaking, vernacular. It hasn't been a vernacular language for at least 2,500 years. So at the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, they were speaking a lot of different dialects that derive from Sanskrit, just like a lot of, the Romance languages derive from Latin and Greek. And so Pali was one of them. And so it's related to Sanskrit, and I've been enjoying going back to those Pali texts and trying to learn a little Pali. When I was in graduate school, I studied Sanskrit, and we used to make fun of all the kids who were studying Pali. It was like Sanskrit baby language, very simplified. Relative to Sanskrit, it's very simplified. So be careful what you laugh at. You might become it. So sutta, Maha Sutta, it's a great discourse on Satipatthana. Patthana means foundation, establishment. And sati is the Pali for the Sanskrit word smriti. Who knows what smriti means? Yeah, it means memory, really. And so this is oftentimes translated as the great discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, on remembering. And that's kind of what smriti means. There's a lot of different, possible translations for mindfulness being one, or attentiveness, or something like that, but it just means remembering. Remembering to be here now. How's that? Remembering to be here now. Remembering to live. Remembering to live instead of thinking about living all the time. Later I'll live, next week I'll live. Thinking about next week all the time. Or I used to live back then when, in the good old days, or back then when someone hurt me that I can't let go of, you see. It's remembering to live here and now. So in that text, the text goes through what they call the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and we'll review that in the afternoon teachings beginning tomorrow. One of those, so I'll just tell you what those foundations are. The 4 foundations, so-called foundations here. Body, being mindful of your body, being mindful of your physicality. You're sitting now, sit. While you're sitting, sit. Be sitting while you sit. And when you walk, be walking. Right? Like that. Pay attention to what we're doing. And if you're like me, long periods of time go by where you're unaware of your body. You're just kind of on automatic pilot and, in our heads all the time. and kind of unaware of what's going on physically. Even in action, even when we're doing stuff, we're kind of unaware of our bodies often, right? Just kind of automatically doing things. So that's the first one. Then feelings, being aware of your feelings. And we're pretty much always having feelings of some sort or another. You know, in the Buddhist text, they divide feelings into 2 or 3. You know, all feelings can be either pleasant feelings or unpleasant feelings, and sometimes they include neutral feelings, although I was never clear on what that would be. You know, how could you feel if it was neutral? You know what I mean? But they do include that, like just sort of blasé feeling or something like that. So being mindful of your feelings, how am I feeling? And by the way, as you'll see in the afternoon teachings, this is not to, be constantly judging your actions or how your physicality, or your feelings. Not to say I'm having this feeling and I shouldn't have that feeling, or I'm a bad person for having that feeling, or I just love that feeling and I hope I can have that feeling forever. Or, it's just to notice it, just to notice that. And when you're noticing it, you'll notice that they come and go. That they just arise and last a little while and then they just, dissipate. And it's like that with everything. It's like that internally, it's like that externally. Life is change. Life is constantly changing. And nothing about life isn't changing, except for things like empty space, okay? So who cares about that? Everything else is changing. Everything else is changing all the time. Everything with form, everything that has tangibility is changing all the time. And that includes kind of subtle things like thoughts, for example, are changing all the time. And so when you're in the process of mindfulness, you're also training yourself in the truth of the changing nature of reality, the changing nature of the self and the changing nature of reality. And that's something that we don't get a whole lot. We don't understand that. And a little bit of understanding of that goes a long, long way towards happiness, towards living a happier life. Because, the truth shall set you free, not delusion. The truth shall set you free, and the truth is that things are changing all the time. Let's check, shall we? Is your body changing or unchanging? Quick. Yeah? Anyone getting older here? Have you noticed that your body's constantly changing, right? The scientists say that you get a new cellular structure every 7 years, don't they? So, a whole new body. So, people who are identified, as we all are, with our bodies, well, who is it? Who is you? If you're changing every 7 years, you become a whole different body, and of course, that doesn't just happen suddenly. It's not like, you same 7 years that, somebody brings a delivery truck and gives you a new cellular structure. It's changing moment to moment, right? So your physicality is changing, your mind's changing, your feelings changing, your experiences are changing. The seemingly unchanging tangible objects in our world are not what they seem, as our physicists have told us, have proven now. This is not a thing, really. It's a process, right? It's a constantly changing process. Looks like a thing, and that's indicative of one of our problems, is that we're taken in by appearances. The appearances of things are different than the way they really are. It doesn't appear that this thing is changing. How often do you think that this thing, by the way, I was going to mention, was made by Paul McPherson, whom we lost this year, as many of you know. And this is to remind us of Paul. Paul's with us, in this form. But it's a changing thing. It's changing. I had a student, some of you have heard this many times before, but I had a student who found somewhere on the internet that some scientist or another has measured change, has measured the rate of change at 3 trillion times a second. Things are changing at the rate of 3 trillion times a second. That includes tables, that includes chairs, that includes the bottom that's sitting on the chair. 3 trillion times a second, inconceivable, right? Inconceivable fast. And then it's often pointed out that that was just, however they measured it, that was the limit that they had on the measurement. Maybe they'll get a faster stopwatch, and find out it's like 5 trillion times a second or 10 trillion times a second, you see. So things are changing all the time. And if you're paying attention, paying attention to yourself, paying attention to, what's going on with your body, what's going on with your feelings, as well as what's going on in your life, you'll notice that things are changing all the time. And you won't be so liable to grasp to them. You see, that's the problem. The problem is grasping to things as if they weren't changing, and then being disappointed when they do. Or grasping onto the idea that you can direct change, that you can sort of micromanage the direction of change, and then be disappointed when it changes in a different way. How's that? Has that ever happened to you, you think? Like all the time it's happening to us, right? All the time. So the next one, the next foundation, body, feelings, and then the next one is called chitta in Sanskrit and in Pali. Chitta means your state of mind, your frame of mind. Sometimes they just sort of carelessly translate it as mind, but it really means the state of mind in which stuff happens inside the mind, like thoughts and feelings happen within a state of mind. You see what I mean? It's like the arena. It's like the arena in which thoughts and feelings and perceptions and stuff like that occur. So the state of mind, and be aware of that. That's the third foundation. And the fourth foundation is a little funky to translate. The word in Sanskrit is Dhamma, in Pali is Dhamma. It sounds like dumber. Did you know that this place used to be called Dummer Academy? Yeah, they probably bad publicity. So Dhamma is the Pali for Dharma. And Dharma in Sanskrit can mean a gajillion things. It's a very, very polyvalent term. So here in this context, I think it's best translated as thoughts. Thoughts. So be mindful of your thoughts. You're mindful of your state of mind, the chitta, and then mindful of the thoughts that are going on in that state of mind. You see what I mean? Feelings, body, feelings, state of mind, and thoughts. Those are the four foundations. And that's what we'll be going through in the evening class, actually, isn't it? Yeah. I'll be going through some of that. In one of the evening classes, we'll go through that presentation in this text. The evening classes will draw from a number of different texts on the whole topic of mindfulness. So anyway, within that context of the four foundations of mindfulness, within the fourth one, mindfulness of thoughts, among the kinds of thoughts that you should be mindful of are four truths. Four, big thoughts, you could say. Really big thoughts, like Ed Sullivan, really big chip, really big thoughts. So you'll see the first verse there. Everyone have a handout, right? Beautiful notebooks, by the way, aren't they? Yeah. It's a classy retreat. Yeah. No spas or anything, but plenty of aesthetics. Yeah. Moreover, one who is watching thoughts stays focused on the four worthy truths. The Pali is Arya Satya. Satya is Pali for Satya. Can you see why we used to make fun, the Sanskritists used to make fun of the Pali guys? Satya goes to Satya. Satya. It's like, isn't it a little bit like baby talk? Sanskrit. Shouldn't keep saying that. And Arya is the Pali for Arya in Sanskrit, Arya. And Arya is a word that can and oftentimes is translated as noble, especially referring to in a kind of a class way to, it's an old word in Sanskrit. There was the Aryas and then there was the barbarians. The Aryas were the original, like, the invaders in ancient, now we're talking really ancient, 2000, 3000 BC. The Indo-European peoples, as we now call them, came in all directions. They swept through Europe and, conquered everybody in sight because they had a nuclear bomb. They had an ancient version of a nuclear bomb, horse-drawn chariots. And no one else had those. And they just beat up everybody that they encountered. So they took over all of Europe, right up through, Ireland, modern Ireland, the Celtic peoples. And then they swept down south a little bit into Persia, what is now Iran, and then from there into India, and took over all of North India. And so they called themselves the Aryas in India. They called themselves, very typical, right, of ancient peoples. We're the civilized ones. We're the proper human beings. And then the rest of them, these people that we encounter, they're the barbarians. In Sanskrit, the term was dasa originally. Dasa, what does dasa mean now? It came to mean servant. Dasa, like Krishna Das, and all of that, all those dasas, servants of the Lord, servants of God. That was what the Aryas called, the people that they found, the original inhabitants in India. So it gave you a clue as to, what their function was in Aryan society. They conquered them and they enslaved them, basically. So that was the original term, original meaning of the term Arya, proper human being, you could say, civilized human being. And then it sometimes took on, in Buddhism especially, took on a kind of a technical meaning to mean a realized one, somebody who is realized. And that means somebody who has seen directly in an unmediated way, which means unmediated by concepts, by thoughts, by theories and so forth, who has seen the way things are, directly. And has been changed by that. A very common concept in world religions, actually, is that when the mystic, kind of breaks through and sees reality, they become a different kind of person, they become a different kind of being. So that was another connotation of Arya. Here it means like proper, true, real, worthy. I just chose worthy. Because noble, I just got sick of hearing the Four Noble Truths, Four Noble Truths, Four Noble Truths. So just try worthy for a while. Let's see. So when you're watching your thoughts, stay focused on the four worthy truths, he's saying, as a kind of a practice, which is a kind of interesting thing because, you're supposed to be watching your thoughts as they come and go, but at the same time, you're supposed to be kind of controlling your thoughts. And like, well, let me think about these thoughts. Since I'm, thinking thoughts are coming and going, how about trying to think some worthy thoughts? So here are the four worthy thoughts. And how does the mind who is watching thoughts stay focused on the four worthy thoughts? A lot of the Pali scriptures are like this, They say, you should think about the four, how should I think about the four worthy thoughts? A lot of repetition. Why, do you think? To memorize. It's for memorization. They were passed on orally. So it's not often easy to translate it without like sounding boring, So I did my best. Oh, and by the way, if you look in the Pali, in the transliteration there, even in every verse practically, you'll see this bhikkhave, bhikkhu. Bhikkhu means monk. So he's giving a teaching to monks. Bhikkhave means, oh, you monks that I'm teaching. And then bhikkhu means, a monk who is watching thoughts stays focused on the thing. So I just, for readability's sake, just eliminated all that. But it's there. He's giving a teaching to a group of monks, and he's talking about a monk. I just translated one who is watching. But literally it means a monk who is watching his thoughts, etc. Oh, monks. I had them in it for a while, and then I noticed there was just oh monks, and it was just really getting in the way, I think, of the meaning. All right, so how does one do this watching of the thoughts and staying focused on the four worthy truths? First, one who is watching thoughts knows as they occur. First, he says, this is stress, dukkha. Dukkha in Pali, dukkha in Sanskrit. So let's just stop right there, because dukkha is usually translated suffering. This is suffering. And not just me, but I think a lot of people who are Westerners who are studying Buddhism and teaching Buddhism are dissatisfied with the idea of translating this term as suffering. For one thing, it's a hard sell to people like us who are living blessed, magical lives, to say that, life is suffering. People go like, no, it's not that bad, or, you should get out more, or, did you get off on the wrong side of the bed, or, what is it, So it doesn't really get to the meaning of it in the same kind of way that, it must have, in the original language, it must have been like getting at it in a way that I don't think we can quite get at it in the translation in English with the word suffering. So I just tried stress because, especially in 2013, modern Western societies in 2013, we feel suffering as stress. Or you could say that we can recognize that life is stressful a lot easier than saying life is suffering. You see what I mean? He's trying to point out that we're unhappy, that's all. That we're unhappy. I tried it another way just recently in a teaching in New York. Discontent. That life is, that we're dissatisfied, that we're discontent. And that's another way to go with it. So just to let you know that's the word that we're translating, dukkha, and we'll try to, tonight we'll go through like what he unpacks it, what he means by this is dukkha. So anyway, as they occur, one who is watching thoughts knows as they occur. This is stress. This is how stress arises. This is the cause. This is the stopping of stress, the end of it. Stopping, in Pali as well as in Sanskrit is nirodha. Nirodha, a word that you also find in the yoga texts. The Yoga Sutra, second verse, first chapter, defines yoga as a kind of nirodha. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Nirodha means cessation. Yoga means yoga. Yoga is the cessation of vrittis that are happening in your chitta, in your mind. And the vrittis is variously translated as, the turnings of the mind. That's kind of literally what vritti means. The mind keeps churning, the churnings of the mind, the obsessions of the mind. And that's not a bad way to think about it. That the mind is just, constantly obsessive. And yoga is meant to stop the obsession, the inner obsession, and get some shanti, some peace, some peace of mind. So that's the nirodha, stopping something, which is, is a really very, very important term, actually. In general, it's an important concept. It's very, very important in both Buddhism and in yoga circles and in other forms of Indian religion. It means that we don't actually have to acquire something. We don't have to get something that we don't have in order to be happy. We need to stop something. You see? We need to stop something that's going on and realize something that's there all the time. But we can't see it or feel it or get in touch with it because it's clouded over. There's too much junk on top of it, too much vritti going on, too much churning and, obsessing and thinking, too much junk. So this is very, very hopeful, I think, if you think about it. It means that, There's nothing much that really needs to be done except for stopping things that we're doing. Stopping the things that we're doing that are obscuring what our natural state, you could say. And sometimes they do say, our natural state. The Atman, the true self, the true nature, Buddha nature, sometimes, different names for it. Our soul, our divine spark, whatever it is, there's something inside there that's pure. Something inside each and every one of us equally, okay? No one has more of it than someone else. I got 85% Buddha nature, you only have 43%. Not like that. Everyone got 100% and has always had it. Never been without it. Unborn. Never started. And that's your eternal self. Because it's unborn, it will never die. Anything that's born will die. You got a birthday, you're going to have a death day. But there's some part of us, our true nature, it has never been born and therefore will never die. And that's the immortality that we have. That's the only hope for immortality that we have, is identifying with that part of ourselves, that part of our being, that we all share with all other beings, you see? So it's not a particular, it's not an individual. You say your name to yourself as an individual. We're all like individuals. And as individuals, we will all go to our grave. We will die. But the general, the archetypical, the universal, that doesn't die because it's never been born. It never changes, never fluctuates, never gets more or less, universal and true and eternal, like that. So nirodha means you stop something. You stop the obscurations. You stop what's blinding us to the truth, to our real nature, to our soul, to our divine spark, whatever you want to call it, you see. And then people call it, well, I call it divine spark, and you call it Atman. So let's have a big war about that. Or, I say Atman, you say un-Atman. Buddhism is like un-Atman, and many forms of Hinduism is Atman. It's just like you say potato and I say potato, Big deal, doesn't matter what you call it. These are just fingers pointing to the same moon. Yeah? The indescribable moon. And then everyone has these big finger wars. My finger's better than your finger. Right? Not about the finger. It's not about the words. It's not about the concepts. It's about what they're pointing to. It's about the truth, about the experience that can't be put into words by definition, you see. You put things into words, you particularize it. You individualize it. You make it something. Instead of, you could say either nothing or everything. So then they have a big war about that. We say emptiness, nothing. We say everything. Brahman. Let's be big finger wars about that. Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. I'll tell you a joke. This is an old joke. Some of you heard it before. But since I have some new people here, I can tell them my jokes over and over and over again. Religion is like a swimming pool. All the noise is coming from the shallow end. All the big fights, all the big doctrinal disputes, all the big debates, that's the kiddie pool. And at the deep end, it's silent. It's awestruck and dumbstruck. When you're awestruck, you become dumbstruck. You know what dumbstruck means? It means you don't say nothing. Because your mouth, I can't keep talking. You can't keep talking when your mouth's like, yeah. So this is stress. This is how stress arises. This is the stopping of stress, nirodha. And this is the method for leading to the stopping of stress. This is the method. And so there are the four truths right there in a nutshell. And then the rest of this section of the text goes through them one by one and explains what he means by them. And then the last one, the method leading to the stopping of stress, will be the gateway into our afternoon teachings beginning tomorrow. Is it? Tomorrow? Yeah. Okay. The method. So we'll do four classes in the afternoon, this week on the method, which is the eightfold, 8-part method. By the way, this text doesn't go into it, but this is supposedly the first teaching of the Buddha. This is the first teaching as the Buddha arose from the so-called Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening. And, so I don't know, maybe some of you are unfamiliar with the whole mythology of the story of the Buddha. It's kind of cool. The Buddha was, and a myth, by the way, doesn't mean bullshit, okay? Like if you look into the dictionary, that's kind of the first thing that you'll see under the modern English connotations of myth, false story. And myth doesn't mean a false story. It means a story that's eternally true. It's different from history because it's repeatable. A myth can be relived over and over again. You can't repeat history. We have that expression, right, that history repeats itself, but it actually doesn't ever, right? History doesn't ever repeat itself, but myths repeat themselves over and over and over again. They're archetypes, you see, they're archetypical stories. So, in our, what's left of, what we have of the meaning of myth, of the use of myth, it's a story that begins once upon a time, and then we tell the story. You've all told stories to your children that begin once upon a time. What does that mean exactly? If your kid was like some little nerd, you might say, well, when was that, Daddy? What year did that occur in, that once upon, and that's to miss the whole point. You see, once upon a time opens up into timelessness. It opens the story into a time that isn't time, a time that's always time. You see, like that. So once upon a time, there was a kid named Gautama that was born in India, once upon a time. And he was predicted to have one of two destinies from birth. Wise men came to visit him. Sound familiar? The myth of the Buddha was probably influenced the myth of Jesus. Buddhism was known in the Roman Empire. It is very possible, because there's a lot of similarities, actually. So once upon a time, Buddha was born, wise men came and made prophecies, prophesied. This kid's going to have one of two career trajectories. He's either going to be a world conqueror, a world emperor, the President Obama of his time, or he'll be a simple monk who will become an awakened one. Guess which one Mom and Dad wanted him to have? And so they spent his childhood, right up through his teens, sheltering him from the world so he wouldn't renounce it and become a monk and, eventually a Buddha. So he would take the career trajectory of a world emperor. So they never let him outside, according to the myth, right? They never let him outside the gates of the castle. And they provided all kinds of stuff. They had like flat screen TV and, with lots of channels on it. You sound familiar at all? This is an archetype, right? Sort of cushioned from reality, cushioned from the reality. Had all kinds of like babes hanging around and, no, he had supposed to have a whole harem and, and then they like taught him like all these arts, arrow shooting, bow and arrow, and, the arts of a world emperor, that would be useful as a world emperor. So he had all these hobbies and, and chicks and diversions. And, one day he kind of like woke up and said like, wonder what's outside the gates, wonder what's out there. And so the next part of the story is about him asking his charioteer to take him out for 4 different tours, excursions outside the castle. And in the first one, he saw a sick man. Was it the first one? Sick, And in India, even today, you can go and see lots of sick people on the streets. They're not all in the hospitals where we don't have to look at them. So, what it's like when you get sick is that your body fluids start coming out. You can't keep them all in, so they all start coming out everywhere. So, what's wrong with that guy, says the Buddha, future Buddha, to his charioteer. And the charioteer says, he's sick. He's got sick. And the Buddha said, wow, how did that happen to that one person? And then the charioteer starts wising him up. Sickness happens to everyone. Everyone's subject to sickness. Second trip, he goes and he sees an old person, having never seen an aging person before, you see. And so what happened to him is like, everything's sagging. Everything's sagging and, kind of bent over a little bit, can't walk so good anymore, can't see so good anymore. What happened? What uniquely happened to this poor fellow? And again, the charioteer says, this is old age. This is what happens when you get old. Everyone goes through old age. And the Buddha's just like, future Buddha is just like, kind of in shock because, according to the myth, right? Kind of in shock because he had never imagined that this was reality, you see. He was sheltered from it. When people got too old, like we do, we put them away so you don't see them. When people got too old in the castle, they kicked them out so the Buddha wouldn't see them. Then the third trip, he sees a corpse. Do you remember when you saw your first corpse? Is there anyone in this room who has not seen a corpse? That's a dead person, okay? Corpse means dead person. Is there anyone who has not seen one? Never have. Never have. Yeah, it's quite amazing. Yeah, you should check it out. You should go somewhere and see a corpse. No, really. You can't quite believe it, right? You can't, you wonder like maybe they're just sleeping or something, like if you push them, maybe they would move again, and they just don't move. They're dead. And all the color goes out, it's like that. So the Buddha was in shock. So like, oh my God, what happened to this? Maybe the Buddha tried, took a little stick, maybe poked the corpse a little bit, see what would happen. And, the charioteer says, this is death. This happens to everyone. If you're born, you will die. And, again, the Buddha is just like amazed. The Buddha is confronted with reality for the first time. You see, that's the point of the story, really. He's confronted with the realities of life for the first time. And many of us have done our damnedest not to be confronted with the realities of life, our whole lives, actually, and continue to, hoping that if we close our eyes like little children, it'll go away, that we'll never get sick, we'll never get old, we'll never die, like just in denial, total denial about the few things that we know for sure will happen in life. If you live long enough, you'll be sick. If you live long enough, you will get old. And if you don't, you'll die anyway. You'll die. You'll die one way or the other, see? Like death and taxes are the two sure things, right? So, what's the point of like going through life in denial about the one thing that we know for sure is going to happen? All these other things we don't know for sure is going to happen, all kinds of things that we're worrying about, stressing about, planning for, we don't know for sure it's going to happen. There's one thing we know for sure is going to happen, and that is that we'll die. And in the meantime, we'll get sick and get old, hopefully, right? Not necessarily, but for sure we'll die. So this is just reality. He wakes up, and then the fourth side, the fourth tour, he sees a mendicant, he sees a sadhu, he sees a world renouncer, who is, who's trying to get in touch with reality, who's really confronting reality, not just ignoring it. And the Buddha says, well, I want to confront reality too. I want to be like that too. So he leaves. He leaves the castle and he does a whole bunch of experimentation. He goes to the summer retreat, then he goes to, Vipassana retreat, and then he goes to, take some Dzogchen teachings. He goes to some Christian thing and, tries out a whole bunch of stuff. And nothing really works. He's not Nothing's changing. There's nothing making a dramatic breakthrough. So he decides to just sit down under a tree and confront reality head on until he gets it. Through meditation, they say. But meditation just means concentration on the case, concentration on the facts of life. And there's all kinds of temptations. Sound familiar? There's all kinds of temptations that occur. Mara, the demons come and tempt him with all kinds of stuff. And he just stays firm and says, no, I've been there, done that kind of thing. I want to find out what's real. I don't want any more diversions. And so then he awakens. He reaches his awakening, which is a much better translation of bodhi than enlightenment. Bodhi doesn't mean enlightenment. I don't know where this tradition started in the West of translating bodhi as enlightenment. I think it probably has something to do with some reverberations to the 18th century, where everyone got enlightened in the West, and now we're all fine, right? No, it means awakened. It means his eyes were opened to the facts, to the case, to the truth. He awakened to the truth. And then there was a sort of another kind of temptation, apparently, in the myth, okay? This is a very, very cool myth, because we can all relate to it, I think. We can all find ourselves in the story, and we relive it, we kind of are reliving it. So there was another kind of temptation to say, well, I figured stuff out, I awakened, but other people, they're not going to get it. Other people are, they're hopeless, they're so benighted. They're so, trapped in their illusions and delusions and mental afflictions, according to the myth. And then all the gods come and start pleading with the Buddha to not just keep it to himself, to teach, in other words. And he plays kind of hard to get for a while, and so I don't think so. And so they keep asking. They ask 3 times, and the 3rd time he says, "Oh, well, all right." And that's a tradition now in Buddhism. You're supposed to ask 3 times before a teaching, to make sure you really want it. Mm-hmm. So then he goes and he finds a bunch of guys that he used to hang out with, when he was a Jehovah's Witness or something. And no diss against Jehovah's Witnesses. Just it was a sect. He finds a particular the people that were in a particular sect. Nowadays it could be Buddhists. You might find 5 Buddhists who are all into being Buddhists instead of being awakened. They're just identified with their little sect. And so they see him coming. This was a sect that emphasized radical austerities. Physical austerities, not eating for long periods of time and, whipping yourself and, stuff like that. And so they see the Buddha coming, the awakened one coming, and they start jeering, according to the story. They start laughing and dissing him. He's like, look who's coming. Look how well-fed he is. What a loser. They're all skinny, weak, what a loser. There's that loser Buddha. And the story is that the Buddha just says, shut up. It's loosely translated, okay? You don't know who you're talking to, kind of, Shut up and listen. Yep. And then he taught the 4 worthy truths. The first thing he said after awakening to anybody else, to an audience, was these things. He said, you're stressed out. And that's caused. That didn't just happen, It's caused. It arises. Stress arises. And it doesn't have to be this way. You could stop your stress. You could stop your discontentment, your unhappiness. And I'll tell you how to do it. Eightfold Path, I'll tell you how to do it. So next page, I think, in your handout. And what is the worthy truth of stress? So this is the first thing. First of the 4 truths is, y'all are suffering. Y'all are in trouble here. And he could say that because he ain't. He's outside of it. He's outside of the fishbowl looking back in now. He's awakened. He's happy. He's content. So he says, I remember what it used to be like. And I look at you and, I remember what it used to be like. You're suffering. You're stressed out. So what does he mean by that? What is that truth exactly? And here's the, extended dance version of the first truth. Birth is stressful, old age is stressful, sickness is stressful, and death is stressful. Sadness, despair, unhappiness, irritation, and anxiety are stressful. When confronted with what is disagreeable, it's stressful. It's stressful to be separated from what is agreeable. And when we don't get what we want, it's stressful. In short, grasping to the 5 groupings, this is a technical sort of thing in Buddhism. There's 4 main mental parts to ourselves and 1 physical part, our bodies. Grasping to the 5 groupings and physical foundation that make up, is stressful. So here's the laundry list that he unpacks. And some of it's pretty obvious. You don't have to do big teaching on it. When we get what we don't want, it's stressful, right? When confronted with what's disagreeable. When it's unpleasant, right? Like we were talking about this afternoon, thinking that everything should be pleasant all the time. Well, when it's unpleasant, we're stressed out. We're unhappy. We're discontent. It's stressful to be separated from what is agreeable. When we lose the things we like. That ever happened to you ever? Losing the things that we like. The iPod breaks, or your car doesn't start, or someone dies that you love. That's stressful. It hurts. And it's stressful to be separated from what's agreeable. And when we don't get what we want, it's stressful. When we think we should have more money or a better job or better partner or something like that, and we don't get it, then we're unhappy. Or just, dissatisfied. So I wanted to go back to, and then of course this whole list of basically synonyms, I did my best to sort of make them sound different. Sadness, despair, unhappiness, irritation. Irritation in Pali is domanassa. Domanassa, what does that sound like? Dharmanasya in Sanskrit. Dormanassa. Dormanassa. Dharmanasya means bad-mindedness. And I find the best translation for that to be irritation. It's kind of like low-level simmering, low-level irritation that then erupts into anger. It's the condition of possibility for anger. And that's suffering. It's, that's stress. And there's lots of reasons why we have that, some of which are totally preventable. Totally preventable to, some reasons why we have this kind of irritation are preventable. For example, not getting enough sleep at night leaves you with this kind of low-level irritation all day long. And as soon as something happens, unwanted happens, as soon as someone crosses you, as soon as you're frustrated in one way or another, then the anger can come right up because it's just simmering there. And then it comes to a boil. That's one. For many people, not eating for long periods of time, skipping meals or something like that, deferring meals brings on this low-level irritation. There's someone that some of us know very well in this room. I won't mention her name. She's not here, so I could probably, but I'm not going to. She's really like this. If she just gets a little hungry, her whole being goes to pot. just can't handle anything anymore. And that's totally preventable. You know, get a power bar or something, you know what I mean? You know, just, you know, when you get that hunger, especially if it's leading to that kind of like, you know, irritation, then, you know, that's easy to solve. Here's another one that's easy to solve when it comes to irritation that then can lead to anger, is putting yourself over and over and over again in a situation that you know has always before led to irritation, and then this time you think somehow it won't. I'll give you an example from my own life on this. I used to do quite a bit of running, long distance running, and I lived in California in Venice Beach. And along the coastline, running from, I think, I don't know where it begins. It goes all the way up to Topanga and goes way down to somewhere else. Do you know what the boardwalk, the sidewalk along the beach? It goes to Malibu, I think. It goes to Topanga or Malibu. That's the northern side, but then south it goes where? To Palos Verdes, yeah, maybe. It's it's like 20 miles maybe, 15, 20 miles, something like that. And anyway, this boardwalk, they call it a boardwalk, but it's, you know, it's sidewalk. This is known as the bike path, officially. But everyone knows, the runners at least, that it's the bike path and runner path. And, you know, the bikers and the runners didn't usually have too much trouble. You know, the bikers would come and they go ding, 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 and, you know, you get out of the way, and it was all pretty cool. Nobody called it the walking four abreast path by tourists from the valley who didn't apparently know the rules here. So, you know, regularly, I would do my run regularly. There they were, you know, like dawdling along, taking up the whole sidewalk. And then, you know, you have to go and break your gait and go into the sand. And, you know, if you're a runner, you know, that's like, you know, it screws you up. So every time I would run, I would like, you know, get pissed off about these like, you know, these slow walkers who were walking on my running path. And finally it dawned on me, you know, they're going to be there again today. You know, there hasn't been like a major cleanup, no military action, you know, has occurred, and martial law hasn't been, you know, imposed to prevent this. So they're going to be there again. So you expect it, you see, and then you brace yourself, and you know, you expect it. And there's a lot of situations like that in life, isn't there? Where you just know, you know, that person at the office that irritates you, she's gonna be there again. You know, it's not like she's gonna be like taken up into heaven, you know, overnight, so you never see her again. So you know, there's a certain amount of you know, avoidance of some of these things. So he's just like, you know, this big laundry list, right? What I wanted to pause on a little bit is the first one. Birth is stressful, old age is stressful, sickness is stressful, and death is stressful. Because this one like puzzled me for a long, long time. Did the Buddha really mean that birth in and of itself is suffering? That sickness in and of itself is suffering? That old age in and of itself, intrinsically, inherently, is suffering? And that death, again, intrinsically, inherently, essentially, is suffering? And I don't know how he could have really meant that. See, I don't, and if you know, when we get to the next part of the Four Truths, you know, you'll see maybe why I say that. Birth is not suffering. It's not stressful, necessarily. See, birth is stressful if you think it's not going to end in death. Birth is stressful if you think that it's not going to end in death. Birth is stressful if you think that it's all going to happen in golden light with no blood or screaming or, you know, pain. Then it's stressful. If you've idealized it, you see, or if you think it's something that it's not, then it'll be stressful. But it's reality. Things are, we're born, people are born, beings are born. Everything's born, in a sense, right? Everything arises. Events arise, physical things arise, waves arise. Yeah, everything arises. That's birth. That's reality. So I don't think that the Buddha meant reality is suffering. He meant our relationship to reality is suffering. Sickness is not necessarily suffering. Sickness is suffering if you think you never were going to get sick. Then it's suffering. How could this have happened? I lost my health. Oh my, OMG, I lost my health. Well, what did you think? You knew that you kind of noticed that other people had lost their health, had gotten sick. Did you think you're the only one that was going to go through life without getting sick ever? It's like, and we're like this, right? When other people, have problems or, have illnesses or something, oh, that's too bad. So sorry to hear that. But then it happens to us and it's like, wait, stop the presses, whoa, I'm sick now, And then we're all like surprised and we think it's so unfair, You ever said that to yourself? This is just so unfair that this is happening to me. Well, it happens to everyone. That's what the charioteer showed the Buddha. Happens to everyone. No one's exempt from this, see? And the Buddha wasn't exempt from it either. As a person, embodied human being, he was not exempt from birth, sickness, old age, and death either. But he re-identified himself in such a way that he didn't identify with the body that goes through birth, sickness, old age, and death. You see, that's awakening, re-identification, you could say, radical re-identification. Old age is not stressful. I gave this teaching, a version of this teaching, without doing the full version that I'm doing with you guys in a small town in rural Australia, southern Australia, in a yoga studio in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful, 30 people showed up, from nowhere, just hungry to, hear anything. And and I started going through this, the laundry list, birth is suffering, sickness is suffering, old age is suffering. And this lady, she must have been 85. Don't you think, Cindy? About 80, 85. She immediately raises her hand and says, old age is not suffering. I'm 85 years old and I'm as happy as can be. So then, what was the Buddha wrong? The old age is suffering. It's our attitude towards old age that makes us suffer. It's thinking that you'll never get old. And then you get old and you go, how did this have ever happened? Well, what did you think? If you were born, you're going to live for a while and hopefully you'll get old and then you'll die. Death is not suffering either. It's only suffering if you think it would never happen somehow. To you or to anyone else, you see. It's suffering. Of course, it's not like, so I just accept death and then I don't care when my loved ones die. It's not like that. But it's not being like totally taken unawares by the realities of life and appreciating the people that are in your life when they're here, because they're not going to be here forever, you see. And you're not going to be here forever. So that's my understanding of how to understand this phrase. Birth is stressful, old age is stressful, sickness is stressful, and death is stressful. It's only when we're avoiding them, when we're in denial about them, that makes them stressful. This is just life. So let's look at the next one. So then what is the worthy truth of how distress arises? So then we now move to the second truth. The first truth is, if you wanted to just kind of remember it, Houston, we have a problem. You know that phrase, kind of famous phrase that the astronauts radioed down when their spaceship didn't work anymore? Houston, we have a problem. And we all have a problem. We're all stressed out. We're all suffering. And that's the beginning of a spiritual life, is recognizing that. You know, not running away from it and not trying to distract ourselves from it all the time and not being in denial about it either. Oh no, my life's pretty good, until it isn't, right? Until it isn't. And so just to be aware, you know, yeah, I'm not happy. I'm not content. To be aware of that. You know, this is, right, this is mindfulness he's talking about. Be aware, you know. Think of what kind of thoughts are occurring, you know. Be aware. And so that's the beginning. Without that, not much further can you go. That sounded like Yoda, didn't it? Not much further. No, without that recognition that there's a problem, how are you ever going to seek for a solution? See? And many, many people go through, especially in our culture, go through their whole lives thinking, well, it's not so bad. You know, why should I bother? Why should I come to a summer retreat? You know, I got a holiday to go to. I'm going to go skiing, you know, enjoy myself, you know. Why should I go and try to improve myself or try to learn anything? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Until what? You see, until the rug's pulled out and everybody's sitting on a rug. Everyone in this room, you know, and the rug is occasionally, with some regularity and with enough regularity, pulled out from underneath us so that if you're paying attention, you might realize that there is a problem here that you can't just solve through buying stuff and, you know, getting a better job and having better relationships and drinking and, you know, just trying to, you know, anesthetize yourself. You know, some of the Buddhist teachers say that life is kind. Samsara is kind. So I thought it was suffering. He said, no, it's kind because it won't let you go too long without showing you its true nature. You know, you can be in denial about it all you want, but you know, every once in a while, you know, life's going to come and slap you upside the head. And then, you know, and that's a wake-up call. That's a wake-up call to get serious about, like, you know, about confronting reality, about like dealing with reality rather than trying to ignore it or run away or pretend it's not going to happen to you or, you know, any of these kinds of devices that we try futilely. So the second truth is, you know, and it doesn't just happen, okay? Poo-poo doesn't just happen. Suffering doesn't just happen. It's caused. It's not just random. See, if it were just random, we'd all be in big doo-doo. Because then there would be nothing we could do about it. You see? If things were just happening totally random. I'll put it stronger. I'll put it differently maybe. If our responses to life were out of our control, then we would really be in deep doo-doo. Because we would just be at the mercy, the vicissitudes of, you know, the mercy of whatever comes, you know, whatever happens without any tools whatsoever to deal with it. So the second truth is starting to get at, well, you know, what can I do about it? The second truth is actually saying there is something you can do about it. You can stop the causes. You can stop the causes. And when the causes are stopped, then that's the third truth, right? The third truth is that it's possible to stop them. So the second truth is to identify, well, what is the cause? What is the cause of distress, of stress? It is tanha, craving, which brings about repeated rebirth accompanied by desire for sensual pleasure, seeking pleasures here and there. In sum, it is craving, tanha, for the objects of sensual desire, for craving for continuation and craving for termination. So we'll go through it. This is standard in the ancient Indian texts, in the ancient Buddhist texts, to identify the problem, to identify the cause of the problem. The problem is unhappiness. The problem is dissatisfaction. The problem is discontentment. The problem is, you know, is non-acceptance of life, you could say. Non-acceptance of life as it is. And the the problem, the cause of the problem is what I've translated here is craving, but it can also be translated as desire or greed, wishing it were different. Wishing it were different. In the kind of ways that I was talking about this afternoon. Those three main mental afflictions. You know, here they've just identified one of them, really. But they're all three entailed. Always, right? Desire, anger, aversion, you could say, is desire thwarted. Aversion, I don't want this because I wanted that and I didn't get it. But I don't want this, you see? So desire and aversion are kind of versions of each other, so to speak, and they're all versions of ignorance. Of ignorance. It shouldn't be this way. That's ignorance. Because what's it like? It's like this now, isn't it? Yeah, it's like this now. And to say it shouldn't be like this now is just ignorance. It's delusion. In Sanskrit, they sometimes call it moha. Moha means you're just confused. You're just out to lunch by saying it shouldn't be like this now, because it is. So this is craving, this craving or desire, which then leads, for those of you who want to have more retreat, after the summer retreat ends, you can get on a plane and come to Santa Barbara, California, where in less than 2 weeks, is it? Less than 2 weeks, we're going to do a whole other retreat on what's called the 12 links of dependent origination, which is a mouthful. It just means like, what's the cause of suffering? How come we're suffering, And in that teaching, that's an old teaching also in Buddhism, there's two weak links in the chain. It's a kind of a circle of causality, you could say. And there are two weak links in that chain. One is ignorance. If you wise up, the chain is broken. Wise up about reality. And the other one is grasping. Craving leads to grasping. Craving means, sometimes they translate it clinging. Upadana. It means like you want, and so you grasp to that you want. And you don't want, so it's a kind of a negative grasping. So you grasp to the idea of not having it, It's the next step in a way of this idea of craving. Once we want something, once the craving begins, then if we just let it go, you see, if we just follow our instincts, then we end up with this kind of grasping. And that's the problem. That's another weak link, because he doesn't say actually that the craving is the main problem. It's the leading to the grasping that's the problem. So this is kind of also interesting. It's not, maybe, this is a different teaching actually, but, from this point of view, from the point of view I was just describing in the 12 links of dependent origination, it may never be possible to stop the craving. It may never be possible to stop desire or aversion, but it's the grasping that can be stopped, you see. And so the teaching that we'll be doing, especially in the evening at this retreat, is to learn how to just watch it. Just watch as they arise, as these feelings arise, as this craving, this desire, and without following it, you see. Without like identifying with it or being compelled by it, oh, I must have it, or I must get rid of it, you see, then the grasping starts. So in the Buddhist tradition, they've got like, it's sort of especially the Indian-based, Indian traditions in Tibet, like that, they're just all about like lists. There's just endless lists. It's like the Count from Sesame Street got let loose. So there are actually 4 kinds of grasping that are listed. And one of them is mentioned here. He's talking here about craving, but then, as I said, leading into grasping. Grasping for sensual pleasures, kama, tanha here. Just wanting to be pleasured all the time. Just wanting things to go right all the time. That's a craving. That's a serious craving. And the opposite of that is to be unhappy when they don't. You see? And that's also that's the first of the four graspings. Everyone clear on the, craving, grasping thing? I'm talking about grasping here, this list. So that's one of them, grasping to sensual pleasures. Another one is grasping to the belief in an unchanging you, unchanging self. You say your name to yourself, as if you had some kind of unchanging essence as an individual, as a person, instead of being a constantly flowing thing, constantly changing thing. So that's a long story, and you don't have to worry your heads about that right now. The next one is grasping to rules and regulations. Shila is actually the word used here, same word as the perfection of ethics, Shila. Grasping to, so sometimes, because they can't, I think personally, because the traditions can't quite confront the radicalness of an original teaching, they sometimes gloss it and they say, wrong morality, useless morality, like self-torture, self-flagellation and all like that. But it doesn't say that. It says Shila. And there is a kind of a grasping to morality, that props up our egos, that props up our sense of superiority over other people, the goody two-shoes syndrome. Oh, I don't lie, I don't steal, I haven't drank for 20 years, blah, blah, blah. I'm such an awesome person. And that's a form of grasping. And that's a form of suffering. That's a reason for suffering. In case you hadn't noticed, pride and arrogance is a cause of suffering. It is a form of suffering, actually. And then it causes more suffering. So, and then very interesting one, grasping to drishti. Drishti, we'll talk more about that in the Eightfold Path, because that's one of them, have proper drishti. But in this teaching, in this other form of, the other aspect of the teachings, grasping to views, literally. Viewpoint, drishti means a focal point, like in yoga when you, get your drishti and so you can stand on one leg for a long time, a focal point. You can think of it as a point of view or a world view. Grasping to doctrines, basically it means. Grasping to philosophies and doctrines as if mine were the truth and yours all suck. That's the grasping part. Grasping to the exclusivity of drishtis. Nagarjuna ends, like I mentioned Nagarjuna before, great teacher, great philosopher of Buddhism. He ends his classic, The Root Verses on the Middle Way, after 27 chapters, long chapters, deep chapters. Last verse, I bow down to Gautama, I bow down to the Buddha, who out of compassion taught the real deal, Saddharma, the real truth, out of compassion, which eliminates all drishtis, which eliminates all, in order to undercut, I forget exactly, do you remember, Cindy, the exact language? It's to talk the end of all, to bring to the end all viewpoints. He taught the truth, the true Dharma, the truth, which means, the experience, unmediated by, philosophies and doctrines and teachings and debates and all of that, in order to bring about the end of all that nonsense. All that fighting and internal and external. Who's right, who's wrong, Atman, unatman, this, that, my truth, your truth, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, brings to an end all of that. Grasping to drishtis. So it's very interesting. I love finding stuff like this in Buddhism that says, don't be a Buddhist. Don't grasp Don't grasp to your isms, and your identities, because they inevitably bring suffering in one form or another. They bring minimally, they bring the suffering of propping up your ego through some kind of identification. Oh, now I'm somebody, I'm a Buddhist. Must be somebody here. See? Just like we do with our jobs, just like we do with our income, just like we do with our things, these are all just props for our ego so that we can feel like we're really somebody. And the spiritual life, especially in its more serious, advanced forms, is a systematic kicking out of all those props. Systematic in order to be free. You see, you can't be free with all of these ropes that are tying your balloon down. Buddhist rope, lawyer rope, husband rope, all the little identities that we attach to. And the spiritual life is kind of really is kind of like a hatchet where you're just smashing those ropes, trying to get free. Right? So it's craving which brings about repeated rebirth. And you can think of rebirth not just in I have this life and then I'll have a next life, but rebirth in the sense of re-experience over and over and over again of the same sort of thing, the re-experience of suffering over and over and over again, of stress, accompanied by desire for sensual pleasure, seeking pleasures here and there. So the objects of sensual, in sum, he says, so just to sum up what craving is, in if you had to put it into three categories. Craving for objects of sensual desire, objects that please the six senses in South Asia, the five physical ones and also the mental sense. So thoughts, that are pleasing. So craving for happy thoughts, for pleasant thoughts, rather than unpleasant thoughts, as well as for pleasant smells rather than unpleasant smells, for pleasant feeling, for pleasant tactile sensations, pleasant sights, which one I'm missing? Sounds, tastes, right? Did I say smells? Smells. We've got 7 or 8 senses now. So that's the craving for the objects of sensual desire. And then craving for continuation, especially of personal identity. Craving for eternal life as me. And this, of course, is really where the fear of death is. The real fear of death is that you're not going to be you anymore. And you want to be you forever. Some part of you wants to be you forever. But then he hits the other one on the head. Craving for termination. I want it to just all black out. I want it to just all end. So in a larger sense, you can say, the craving for things that I like or I want to go on. And the craving for the things that I don't like to stop. But it's all craving. It's all just wanting, desire, clinging, craving, thirst. So that's the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is discontentment. What's the problem? What's another word for it? For suffering, for stress, what's another word for it? Discontentment. Problem is discontentment. What's the cause? Discontentment. Right? Yeah. The cause is the problem. The problem is the cause. Same thing, really. Problem is I'm unhappy. The cause of that is that I'm dissatisfied all the time. If you wanted to make some different words, put some different words on it, but it comes to the same thing, doesn't it? Problem is discontentment. I'm always discontent. I always want something that I don't have. And the cause of that is the discontentment itself. What's the solution, do you suppose? Yeah, or you could put it like they do here, a nirodha, a stopping. Something's got to stop. What is it? Discontentment. Stop the discontentment. That's the third noble truth. It is the complete detachment from and stopping of this very craving. Viraga is detachment, viraga. And nirodha, the stopping of this very craving, renouncing it, abandoning it, getting free from it, undermining it, like forget about it, getting rid of it altogether. Okay? It's very beautiful in its elegance, this kind of sort of way of laying it all out. And again, I don't think it's unique to Buddhism at all. If you don't think that there's a problem, you're not going to start any spiritual practice. Every spiritual path assumes that there's a problem that we need to fix, right? If there's no problem, no spiritual path at all, no matter which spiritual path it is. And then the cause of the problem is that, in one form or another, is that you're not accepting life. You're not confronting and accepting life. You're not living. You're not, you're turning your back on life. That's the cause. The cause is that you're not, the cause isn't life. The cause is you're not connected to life. You're not integrated with life. You're in denial about life. You wish you were different, wish life were different. And then the solution is to stop that already. Just stop it and live fully, happily, contentedly with the life as it is. I'm going to talk a little bit, especially, I guess, towards the end of the afternoon teachings on Friday, is it, I guess, about samadhi. Samadhi is, this is a Sanskrit term. A lot of people shake their heads like they've heard it before, It's the goal. It's one of the ways of talking about the goal in Indian religion, especially in yoga, samadhi. But samadhi doesn't mean anything other than integration. Complete integration with life. It's not integrated with another, illusion. What good would that do? To integrate yourself to another fantasy, but to integrate yourself to satya, to reality, to the truth. So it's very, very beautiful teaching here. We've got three now truths down. We've got 3 of them down. There's a problem. Got a problem. There's a cause to the problem. There's an end possible to the problem. You see, I often joke that if the Buddha came and just said the first one, worthy truth number 1, especially the long-playing version of it, it's really depressing, isn't it? It's just sadness, despair, unhappiness. Life is suffering. If he just stopped there, says, life is suffering, gotta go, good luck, that'd be really bad. But there's a second, third, and fourth truths here. It's caused. And cause is already part of the, good news. It's caused means that if you stop the cause, then it doesn't happen anymore. If you stop being dissatisfied, then you're satisfied. If you stop being discontent, then contentment comes. And the third truth is that's possible. What is the worthy truth of how? Oh yeah, I did the one. And what is the worthy truth of, it is the complete detachment and stopping of this very craving. That's the third truth. That contentment is possible. How? Stop being discontent. That's the only way contentment is possible, by the way. You see, sometimes we get the idea that, well, if only I had X, Y, Z, fill in the blank, and there's lots of different ways to fill in the blank. If only I had a new car, if only I had more money, if only I had a better relationship, if only that kind of if onlys. If only I had the direct perception of emptiness. If only I could have shamatha. If only I could have, all these like spiritual ideals, then I'd be content. See, that's why you're not content. That's why you're not content. That's not the solution. Not the solution, in either spiritual or secular ways, is to think that I will be content when. That's why you're not content. You will be You will stop being discontent when you start being content. Is that right? You will be content when you stop being discontent about anything, spiritually, secularly, anything. When you stop the discontent, and not until. That's why I gave you all that mantra again last night, remember? Say Om. I have enough. Om, I have enough. Ahum. That's the contentment mantra. Om, I have enough. Om means, here comes a mantra. Ahum means that's the end of the mantra. Just Sanskrit words to make it sound like a real mantra. But I have enough means exactly what it says. And until we believe that, we will remain discontent. Until we believe I have enough. I have enough teachings. I have enough, good meditation practice. I have enough, ethics. I have enough spiritually too. It's the same. Discontent occurs in the spiritual life as easily as it occurs anywhere else. Anywhere else. And that's not the way to reach the spiritual goal, is through discontentment. So as I said this afternoon, you can practice being content with your level of relative contentment. You can practice being content with even your discontent. You can practice accepting even your inability to be fully accepting. That's the practice. How else did you think it was going to happen? See, has to happen that way. So then the fourth truth, and then we'll call it a day, okay? It's been a long day for a lot of people here, travel day and stuff. So the fourth truth, because this is the thing that we'll be talking about for the rest of the afternoon sessions. And what is the worthy truth about the method? Patipada means the course or path, the means. What's the worthy truth about the method leading to the stopping of desire, leading to the stopping of craving, or of distress rather, right? The stopping of distress, of suffering. It is the worthy path consisting of the following 8 parts. And then sometimes the following is sometimes translated right. The samma in Pali or samyak in Sanskrit. Sometimes they translate that right outlook, right this, right that. I just chose to say proper. These words can mean all kinds of things. This word in the 2 different languages. It can mean the right way, the proper way. It can mean the best way, the perfect, even perfect. It can mean correct, accurate. It can also mean pleasant or agreeable. So that I was sort of tempted to really go for it there. Agreeable outlook, agreeable intention and so forth. But to sort of remain a little truer to the usual translation, right, I said proper. Proper outlook, that's drishti. Again, in Pali, ditti. Right outlook, it means worldview, right way of looking at things. Proper intention, sankalpa in Sanskrit. Sankalpa. Sankalpa means your motivation, your intention, your, why you're doing stuff. Why you're doing stuff. Proper speech, vacha or vak in Sanskrit. Proper speech. Proper action, karma in Sanskrit, in Pali. Proper action. Proper livelihood, ajiva, how to keep your jiva going, how to keep your life going. Proper livelihood. Proper exertion. In Pali, it's vayana. That's the Pali for virya. So, some of you know that word. Virya means joyful effort, working hard for right things. Proper intention. Proper exertion. It means exerting yourself for the right things, mostly, but it also means exerting yourself happily for the right things. So proper exertion doesn't mean like this. you know, with your face all scrunched up. I'm working to get enlightened. I'm trying very hard to be happy. No, we get sometimes that same sort of weird remnants of the Protestant work ethic, you know, we bring right into the spiritual life too, and think that that's the way to do it. It's just like, if I work hard enough and sweat enough, then somehow I'll be happy. And if you're going to be happy, you got to practice happiness. You know, you can't get to happy from unhappy. You can't get to like this, and then, you see? You got to start going like, you know, fake it till you make it a little bit. Yeah. Proper mindfulness, sati, smriti, proper mindfulness, like we were talking about earlier. And proper integration, samadhi. So those are the eightfold. That's the eight parts of the Eightfold Path. We'll go through them one by one in the afternoon classes. They're you know, one way to divide the pie is to divide them in terms of you know, body, speech, and mind. Speech is included, you know, in proper speech, of course, and action is proper body movement. You know, how to comport yourself in your action, also livelihood. And then the other ones are mental. The other ones are concern the mind. There's another way that these eight are classified as the three, under eight becomes three. See, I told you, it's all about counting. And, you know, if you know arithmetic, you can be a really good Buddhist. So these are sometimes called the three extraordinary trainings. The extraordinary training in ethics, and you know, a number of these go under that rubric. The extraordinary training in concentration, mental concentration, and then the extraordinary training in wisdom. So we'll tell you which one's which. I think that, you know, I don't know this well enough to tell you what they are without my notes in front of me, but you can find a place for all eight in those three. And I'll tell you what they are later when I know. Proper outlook and proper intention, I believe, go under wisdom in this categorization. And then speech, okay, see, I actually do know. Speech, action, livelihood go under ethics. And I'm not sure where exertion goes. Maybe ethics too. And then the last two are under concentration, mindfulness and integration, samadhi. Meditation is possible. You know, in those systems, in many systems, that one kind of goes like AC/DC. It kind of swings both ways, sort of. It bleeds over because exertion's necessary for ethics too, of course, as well as concentration and you know, to some extent, wisdom as well. So it informs the other kind of parts of it. All right, so maybe that's enough for tonight. That brought us through the four truths and into the fourth truth as divided into the eightfold method, the fourth truth being the method, the means to achieve happiness, to achieve the end of stress. So tomorrow afternoon, early afternoon, 1 o'clock, we'll start with the first couple of those two, is it? Those first two of the Eightfold Path. All right, so have a good night's sleep. You can start by, start your retreat off, kick it off with a good night's sleep. Yeah, start living the la vida sana instead of la vida loca. And, you know, just chill out. There's nothing much else to do now, you know? It's 9 o'clock. There's no TV. There's no DVD. There's no, you know, there's not a whole lot of distractions here. You can go out and look at the stars for a while and then you'll go to sleep probably. You know, so take advantage. Huh? Meteor showers, yeah. You know, kind of look for the meteor showers. Is that tonight? It's beginning tonight?
Yeah, last night.
Last night too? Did you see them? No. Yeah, yeah, they're visible? Yeah. Midnight to 4. Now, well, wait a second. All right, so we'll see you tomorrow.